If there's one thing people expect to see outside of Alaska other than salmon, it's awesome reality TV. Fortunately, there are shows like Alaska: The Last Frontier, which chronicles the life of the Kilcher clan as they live off the land in their 600-acre home outside Homer. Alaska: The Last Frontier, it broke the familiar reality TV mold by giving viewers a sneak peek into what it's like to live the hard life in one of the world's most remote areas, and fans love it. Number 10, Atlee and Jewel had a rough relationship. The daughter of the famous Atlee Kilcher, Jewel has had a few things to say about her dad over the years, and despite appearing on the show, there were some major issues when she was younger. In her book, Geometry All Abundance 7 Grounds for Prosperity, the singer-songwriter describes her difficult upbringing at the hands of her father. She asked for his permission before publishing the tale of abuse she suffered when she left home at the age of 15. While she admits they have a great relationship now, her father's experiences during the Vietnam War and the abuses he suffered during his childhood made her home a toxic environment. Her mother left her home when Jewel was only 8, and life was hard, but she forgave her father, and the two developed a relationship that she is now comfortable discussing in public. Number 9, Kilchers are never in real danger. As is often the case with reality TV, the reality that is presented is almost entirely fictional. Many episodes attempt to turn ordinary events into life-threatening incidents, but the truth is often less interesting. Not only are they surrounded by a crew, but people on this show and others like it can also be taken to the hospital or receive life-saving treatment, should the worst happen. While it's sure to make headlines, Discovery is unlikely to air a grisly documentary about a real family freezing to death. Number 8, they are only 12 miles from civilization. The way the series is presented, the Kilcher family homestead seems as far from civilization as any human can get. This simply isn't the case, and while the 600-acre plot is certainly large and far from the rat race of city life, it's closer to civilization than many realize. If the Kilchers decide they want to give up their rough living life, it's just a short trip to the nearest Homer town, Alaska. Homer is a small town of about 5,000 people, located 218 miles southwest of Anchorage. Homer was only incorporated in 1964, so it's a fairly new town, but it does have a Safeway food store, various schools, a public library, a couple of newspapers, and a few radio stations. Basically, it's a small American town with everything the Kilchers need to survive, if they choose to go there. Number 7, Atlee Kilcher was taken to hospital with serious injuries. Living in a house can be tough, but Atlee and his family seem to be able to. There is still a risk of injury, and it is not unusual for him. Back in 2015, Atlee had an accident while hiking in Otter Cove. He fell and broke his arm, shoulder, ankle and hip. He also crushed some ribs and perforated both of his lungs. Obviously, he was seriously injured, and his continued participation in the TV show was in question for a while, but he succeeded. Thanks to the support of fans and his wife Jen, Atlee was able to make a full recovery and return to the series. Number 6, Jewel was a homeless gem one day. When Jewel left home at age 15, she went from living in a home with a large family to being homeless. At first she thought she would only be in this position for 2 months, and ended up living in her car for a year. She worked odd jobs when she managed to get her, but found it hard to get her without a title to put on job applications. Instead of letting her presence frustrate her, she applied her problems to her music, helping her out of homelessness. She's talked about her upbringing to help her, since the pioneering lifestyle she was raised in helped her live on her own. As an adult and successful singer-songwriter, she has dedicated her time and money to helping young women, who are also experiencing some of the indignities of homelessness. Number 5, Jayden and Atlee's children are not part of the show. Jayden and Atlee have children, but Jayden is allegedly strongly against their appearance on the show. This leads to a strange dichotomy, in which children are assumed to be a large part of a couple's lives, but they never appear in a show, created in part for their life history. In the end, it is a decision made by the parents about respecting the privacy of their children. Perhaps, as they get older, they may choose to show up more often, but that seems unlikely given what Jayden said about them. Number 4, it's one of many shows filmed in Alaska, in part for a tax credit. Alaska: The Last Frontier. It is one of 20 reality television shows, made and filmed in the 49th state. Thanks in part to the tax credit policy, that has emerged thanks to another popular series, Deadliest Hunting. At the time, it was thought that creating a tax credit would bring more jobs to the state, but it led to out-of-state camera crews arriving to take advantage of them. The result was like Alaskan women looking for love and a number of fish chains out of the water. Alaska now boasts more TV series per capita than any other state. Given that the state is home to only about 735,000 people, the massive influx of TV series that take advantage of tax breaks and widely open spaces has brought in some money while also highlighting the state's natural beauty. Number 3, the production company was fined for fishing violations. There are a number of laws in every state dealing with when, where and how bears can be hunted, but it seems that the Kilcher family either weren't aware of them or completely ignored them when they took to the air to get the blackout bear. It is illegal for a helicopter to fish in Alaska, and when they saw they were filming footage, and a former member of the production company reported it to Alaska state soldiers, the family was charged. Wilma TV Incorporated has also been accused. A subsidiary of Discovery was charged with fishing infringement, as well as indicting Atlee and Christina Kilcher. The charges were dismissed in a deal that resulted in a somewhat negligible fine of $17,500. Number 2, it's written. Anyone who's been watching reality TV for the past few decades should already know that these shows are heavily scripted. Unfortunately, while the unscripted documentary series sounds interesting on the surface, the fact of the matter is that there aren't enough events worth watching TV in Kilcher's life. It's not like a standard written offer. Producers don't necessarily feed them dialogue. It is more about establishing a situation that needs to be resolved. Reality shows have been doing this for years, and Alaska: The Last Frontier no different. Number 1, Jewel and her mother are expats. Atlee's ex-wife is no longer in contact with her daughter, Jewel. When her mother left the family and home, Jewel was only 8 years old, but they maintained contact. Jewel was left to grow up in a home with an abusive father for 7 years before she left the house. Her relationship with her father improved, but her relationship with her mother deteriorated after a heartbreaking realization. Lenedra Carroll returned to the life of a Jewel when her career improved. She even took over as her manager until things went south in 2010. It took her a few years to realize this, but her mother was stealing from her. Jewel divorced her mother and cut all ties. The two remain separate to this day.